Chapter 859. The Missing Mask. Generally, the forbidden objects we commonly encounter do not possess their own consciousness. The power they can exert depends on one hand on their own forbidden ruin sequence level, and on the other hand on the strength of the user's mental power. Instructor, you said that the forbidden objects we see usually do not have their own consciousness. Is there really a forbidden object in this world that possesses self-awareness? A new recruit in the audience asked, puzzled. Bailey Pang smiled slightly. Of course there is. In the human circle of Japan shrouded in mist, there exists a special forbidden object called the Kazatsuke blade, which has an independent self-awareness and can choose its own master. Even if the blade's owner has an extremely weak mental power, it can still unleash tremendous strength. As Bailey Pang explained, the new recruits were completely engrossed. Most of the knowledge he shared came from his own experiences and first-hand encounters, things that textbooks could not provide. For the new recruits, this was true treasure. Not only the new recruits but gradually more instructors gathered around to listen. Just as Bailey Pang was getting into the swing of things, his peripheral vision caught something in the distance and his gaze sharpened slightly. He stood on the platform, his voice abruptly stopping. It was only then that the new recruits snapped back to reality, confusedly asking, "Instructor Bailey, why did you stop? It's not time for class to end yet." Bailey Pang did not respond. He calmly raised a hand to the sky, and a multitude of forbidden objects simultaneously flew into his pocket, while the Tai Chi Bagua diagram beneath his feet also retracted. He patted his deep red cloak and smiled gently at the new recruits below. "Sorry, but today my class ends here. Next, we have important matters to attend to." He stepped down from the platform and walked slowly in a certain direction. The new recruits turned to look. Unbeknownst to them, 6 figures had already stood side by side on the distant grass, holding black boxes and wearing masks, their deep red cloaks swaying gently in the breeze. Bailey Pang lowered his head and pulled out a mask from his own pocket, putting it on. Draped in his cloak, he walked over to the 6 individuals. Lin Chia glanced at the new recruits below, then turned back, extending a hand to point into the void. Endless clouds surged from beneath his feet, forming a massive flowing cloud, and the 7 figures stood atop the cloud, rapidly disappearing into the blue sky. The new recruits stared blankly at this scene, their eyes filled with confusion. "Those are the instructors from the Nightfall team. Where are they going?" "I don't know. They must have a special mission, right? But they look so cool like this." Watching the 7 figures vanish into the horizon, envy flickered in the eyes of the new recruits. "A special team, huh?" Li Jinjin sat on the ground, gazing up at the boundless sky, murmuring, "That seems pretty good. Don't you want to go back to Team 006? Fang Emo, sitting beside her, asked, her ears twitching. "I don't know," Li Jinjin shook her head. "I just envy them for having companions they can rely on and trust." "Tisich." Behind them, Lu Baoyu spoke lightly, "Only the weak need companions. The strong are enough alone." Fang Emo turned to look at him, her gaze turning icy. "Who are you calling weak? Are you tired of living? Does it concern you? Why shouldn't it? Looking for death? Not convinced." On the Nimbus cloud. "How was it? Wasn't I particularly cool just now?" Bailey Pang sat on the cloud, excitedly saying, "That line, 'Sorry but today my class ends here,' was something I thought of back when I was in training camp. I never expected to finally use it." Chao Yuan silently rolled his eyes. "Chia, what do you think is going on with this sudden urgent mission?" Shin Qingzhu turned to Lin Chia. Upon hearing this, everyone's expressions turned serious. "I'm not sure of the specifics, but Commanders will want us to go to headquarters immediately." Lin Chia paused. "However, it seems to be related to the Mask team." "Mask team?" Jialan asked, puzzled. "Weren't they on vacation?" Lin Chia nodded, his gaze landing on Jialan. After a brief moment of eye contact, both of them hurriedly averted their eyes, slightly flustered. Recalling the events of last night, Jialan's cheeks flushed with a faint blush. "But it seems something unexpected has happened." Lin Chia coughed twice. "In any case, at this time, only our team can step in to resolve it." "Understood." Bailey Pang nodded thoughtfully. "But since it's the Mask team, it shouldn't be anything major, right? They are quite strong." "Let's hope so." The training camp was located on the outskirts of the capital city, and with the speed of the Nimbus cloud, it took only a moment for everyone to arrive at the headquarters of the Night Watchers. Knock knock knock. Lin Chia knocked on the door of the commander's office and then pushed the door open. As soon as they entered, they were hit by a strong smell of blood. Lin Chia's gaze swept to a wall still stained with blood, and his brow furrowed slightly. "You're here." Suiqing, sitting behind the desk, slowly opened his eyes. "Commander Zhuo, what happened?" Lin Chia asked, puzzled. "There's a traitor within the Night Watchers." "A traitor?" Hearing these words, the members of the Nightfall team were somewhat surprised. Of course, Lin Chia and An Qingyu were exceptions. They had already suspected this possibility earlier and were somewhat mentally prepared. However, what surprised them was that, judging by the current situation, these traitors had caused quite a commotion. "So the raid on the training camp is also related to them?" Lin Chia asked. "Yes, fortunately you intervened so the new recruits are safe." Suiqing paused before continuing. "What I'm worried about now is the Mask team." "What happened to the Mask team?" "On the day you received your commendation, the Mask team happened to start their vacation. However, just as they boarded the plane to Hainan, they received a phone call." Suiqing took out a document and handed it to Lin Chia and the others. "This call was made by the traitor using my phone, and they likely altered their voice using some ability. They spoke to the Mask team in my identity, and after the plane landed in Hainan, the Mask team went straight to Ningchang County where they completely lost contact." Chapter 860, Tricky Enemies. "Mask is missing?" A serious expression appeared on the faces of those present. "Did that traitor get caught?" Lin Chia recalled the bloodstains on the wall and asked in confusion, "Can't we extract Mask's whereabouts from his mouth?" "He's already dead." Suiqing paused for a moment. "I've basically figured out the identity of the people behind him. However, trying to get anything out of him is not a simple matter." "So, you want us to go look for the Mask team's whereabouts first?" "Exactly." Suiqing nodded. "I will handle the traitor among the Night Watchmen as quickly as possible, but I'm a bit worried about the situation of the Mask team. No matter what, you should go look for Mask. If I have any updates here, I will notify you immediately." Lin Chia decisively nodded. "No problem. Let's set off now." Half an hour later. "Dear passengers, the plane is about to take off. Please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to flight mode." On a passenger plane, Lin Chia, wearing a baseball cap, walked to a window seat and glanced outside, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Chia, why are we taking a passenger plane?" Beside him, Bai Li Pangpang took off his sunglasses and asked in confusion, "Aren't we supposed to go to Hainan to find Mask? Wouldn't it be faster to take the Nimbus? At the very least, we could take a private plane, right?" On the other side, and Qingyu shook her head. "Things aren't that simple. You know the strength of the Mask team. If it were a direct confrontation, unless a god-level being intervened, it would be impossible to wipe them out quietly. But if such a battle were to occur, the Night Watchman wouldn't fail to notice. The most likely scenario is that, without any fighting, someone used means to lure the Mask team to a certain location. So, to find the Mask team, we first need to understand what exactly they encountered." Bai Li Pangpang scratched his head in confusion. "So what does this have to do with us taking a passenger plane?" Generally speaking, mental manipulation techniques would definitely be detected by the Mask team. So the best approach is to use seemingly reasonable natural inducements without supernatural means. Lin Chia spoke calmly. "The most effective method now is to put ourselves in Mask's perspective, personally experience this journey and see where the problem lies. The position I'm sitting in now is where Wang Mian sat that day. So, are we going to Hainan for a vacation now?" Xin Qingzhu asked with a strange expression. "You could say that." As the group was conversing, a flight attendant walked by with a smile, checking everyone's seatbelts and reminding them to switch their phones to flight mode or turn them off before continuing down the aisle. Just as she turned to leave, a shadow coalesced from Lin Chia's shadow. He gently lifted the brim of his cap, and a crimson-eyed black pupil opened rapidly on his forehead, beginning to perceive everything around him. The psychiatric nurse from the God's mental hospital, Black Pupil. Black Pupil's eye of secrets could perfectly see the past and future events occurring on this plane, which naturally included the encounter of the Mask team on the plane that day. With Black Pupil present, Lin Chia could find more details through this aircraft. This was also the reason he insisted on taking this passenger plane to Hainan. However, the most regrettable thing was that Black Pupil could only see the past images through the Eye of Secrets, and could not hear the content of Wang Mian's phone call at that time. Otherwise, all these problems would be easily resolved. The plane is about to take off, Lin Chia said lightly, glancing at the time in the cabin. It was at this moment that Wang Mian received a call from Zhuqing. Ding-ling-ling. The crisp sound of a mobile phone ringing echoed, and everyone turned to look at Lin Chia simultaneously. Lin Chia slowly took out his phone from his pocket, stared at the number for a moment and answered the call. Hello? Commander Zhuo. Bai Li Pengpeng glanced suspiciously at Lin Chia, then turned to look at An Qingyu, who was calling Lin Chia, his mouth twitching slightly. Do we really need to restore it to this extent? He couldn't help but ask. Lin Chia held the phone, fell silent for a moment, then hung up and put it down. Did you discover something? An Qingyu, sitting beside him, asked. Very strange. Lin Chia listened to Black Pupil's recounting of the past images while pondering. After Wang Mian finished the call, although his expression was somewhat serious, it was far from urgent. The other team members also only looked a bit regretful. There was still some time before the plane took off, and they didn't choose to disembark. In other words, the task given to them by the traitor was very likely in Hainan? I think so too. If it were an urgent task from another location, the Tamask team would have definitely disembarked immediately instead of continuing on the passenger plane. That makes sense. And Qingyu nodded. Once the traitor who called them instructed them to go to another location for a mission, the Tamask team would have certainly taken their private plane. Using a private plane would definitely attract the attention of the night watchman, but if they were on a passenger plane to Hainan, the night watchman wouldn't notice at all. They would just think the Tamask team was going on vacation. The timing of his call was perfect, allowing the Tamask team to board the passenger plane to Hainan without any suspicion while evading the attention of the night watchman. The layout is too meticulous. Lin Chia frowned. Who exactly is that traitor within the night watchman? Unknown. And Qingyu paused, but that must be a very tricky enemy. As the engine roared, the passenger plane took off from the runway, disappearing into the clear sky in the blink of an eye. Huaihai City. A streak of azure light swept across the sky, precisely landing in front of a small house on the outskirts, transforming into a young figure draped in a dark red cloak. Zhuqing stood before this familiar small house, a complex expression in his eyes. This was the outskirts of Huaihai City, the most remote area of the entire city, surrounded mostly by desolate farmland and rolling hills. Occasionally, wisps of smoke rose from distant villages, and the sounds of roosters crowing and dogs barking echoed across the fields. The house before him was no different from the most common brick houses in the countryside. The gray exterior walls had gradually peeled away under the wind and sun, revealing the passage of time. Beside the chicken coop, a few hens were nestled in their nests, curiously observing the unexpected guest, Zhuqing. Chapter 861. Them? Zhuqing stood quietly at the door of the low house, a straight knife hanging at his waist. After a long silence, he finally reached out and knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Moments later, an elderly figure with a head full of silver hair opened the door. The old man was somewhat surprised to see Zhuqing. Little Zhuo. Oh no, Commander Zhuo, weren't you supposed to be in an online meeting? We waited for you on video for half a day. Why did you suddenly come here? Zhuqing remained silent, simply lowering his head to gaze at the old man. In the desolate and empty countryside, only the distant sound of roosters crowing remained. The old man and Zhuqing exchanged glances for a moment, then the old man smiled helplessly and turned to walk into the house, saying leisurely, "Come in and sit." Zhuqing placed his right hand on the hilt of his knife and followed the old man into the low house. The interior of the low house was better furnished than it appeared from the outside. Simple and practical furniture was neatly arranged throughout, and the gray cement floor was spotless. In the room, the only modern electronic devices were a digital television and a special computer equipped with a key. That computer was for internal use by the night watchers, an outdated version from over a decade ago. Zhuqing sat down on a stool by the square table, while the old man leisurely walked into the kitchen, brewed a cup of tea with a large red kettle, and then sat down opposite Suiqing, handing him the teacup. I don't have any good tea here, as you know. Just have a little, the old man said, looking at the silent Suiqing, then added with a smile, of course if you don't want to drink you don't have to. Suiqing glanced at the steaming glass cup but chose not to touch it. Instead he slowly spoke up. Old Chen, what have you been busy with lately? Old Chen took a sip from his teacup and smiled. You already know what I've been busy with, don't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have used video conferencing to monitor all the high-level officials. What you really want to monitor is just me, right? Are you worried that I might run away before you arrived? Is that your admission? There's nothing wrong with admitting it. When I started planning all of this, I already anticipated today would come. Old Chen paused, but in my expectations the one sitting in front of me should be Yi Fan. Did I disappoint you? No, quite the opposite. I'm very pleased. Old Chen said with a smile. I believe you are more capable than Yi Fan. Although Yi Fan is deep-minded and very clever, his heart is too soft. He clearly realized the corruption and rigidity among the high-ranking night watchers, yet due to the merits and face of those old predecessors, he hesitated to take action, resulting in his lack of absolute control over the high ranks. But you are different. As soon as you took office, you used Zhou Ping's deterrence and your own means to eliminate all those rigid and decayed old high-ranking officials, replacing them with newcomers you personally promoted. Even I, your teacher, was reassigned to the second-tier management, losing my voice in high-level meetings. You are ruthless, bold, and your cunning and foresight are not inferior to Yi Fan's. Although both of you were trained by me, I have always believed you are more suited to lead the Night Watchers than Yi Fan. All thanks to your good teaching, teacher. Suiqing replied coldly. Old Chen smiled as he held his teacup, seemingly recalling something, and asked, by the way, what about Mou? Did he die? He died, ran into my knife and died. Old Chen sighed regretfully. Although my grandson isn't as smart as you and Yi Fan, he has quite good potential. If properly cultivated, he could have been a decent successor. But you still pushed him into the abyss yourself. Suiqing's eyes turned cold. When I kept Chen Mou by my side, it wasn't just because he was your grandson, but because I truly saw his shining qualities. I had high hopes for him. But why did you have to destroy him yourself? I understood the traps you set, but I still don't understand. You were once a heroic figure in the Night Watchers, having won the Star Sea Medal twice and the Star Medal 6 times. In that era, you were a hero in everyone's hearts. Yi Fan, Xiaoping Gu, we all were trained by you. If it weren't for that monstrous Wang Qing back then, you would have been the 4th commander of the Night Watchers. I don't understand why someone like you would do such things. Do you want to see the Great Xia destroyed with your own eyes? Is that what you want? Suiqing grew angrier as he spoke, his eyes fixed on the calm old man in front of him, his voice trembling. Old Chen calmly took a sip of tea and smiled slightly. You are mistaken, Suiqing. I am not doing this to destroy the Great Xia, but to save it. Save. Suiqing narrowed his eyes. Old Chen, if you're about to tell me that this society is too unfair and dirty, that order should be rewritten, or that humanity doesn't deserve to live in this world, I really might not be able to help but draw my knife and kill you. No, it's not that kind of spiritual salvation, it's real salvation. Old Chen extended his hand, pointing to the void behind Suiqing, to save the countless people behind us. Suiqing furrowed his brows tightly. Collaborating with evil gods to eliminate the new forces of the Night Watchers, weakening the Night Watchers' strength, delaying the formation of the war pass, forcing the Great Xia's gods to act early, and plotting the assassination of the mass team. You call this salvation? Do you know that if the Great Xia loses in this all-out divine war, the entire Great Xia and the countless people living within it will perish as a result? You don't understand, Suiqing. Old Chen spoke slowly. Only when the Great Xia's gods are completely dead and the Night Watchers are destroyed will they spare the Great Xia, and those people behind us can live. You're talking nonsense. Suiqing suddenly stood up from his seat. Our Great Xia has gods, has Zhou Ping, has the pinnacle of humanity, has the Night Watchers. What makes you think we would lose to those outer gods? After being a hero for so many years, how can you bow your head and admit defeat at this moment? That's not it. What do you mean, that's not it? When I said they, I wasn't referring to the outer gods. Suiqing was taken aback. What are you talking about? Old Chin set down his teacup and slowly closed his eyes. Many things you cannot see the night watchers cannot see, but I have already seen. In short, I have already done those things. I don't care if you want to kill me, interrogate me, or torture me. Feel free to do so, if you think those methods will be effective against me. Chapter 862. We want it. The anger in Zhuqing's azure eyes burned fiercely as he suddenly drew the straight knife in his hand, its blade pointed at the center of Old Chen's brow, the pale light of the blade reflecting on the latter's face. No matter what tricks you're playing or what you intend to do, all I know is that your actions nearly cost the lives of over 600 new recruits and put one of the top special teams of the Great Xia in danger. Your actions have completely violated the Night Watchman's code. You are a traitor to the Great Xia. Just as you said, I am not Yi Fan and I won't be as indecisive as he is. Even if you are our teacher, I will not hesitate to torture you. Before that, I hope you will voluntarily tell me where the masked team is. Old Chin held his teacup, calmly gazing at the blade before him, and said lightly, I told you, if you think you can extract anything from me, feel free. Bang! The azure light of the knife erupted from Zhuqing's straight knife, instantly shattering the teacup in Old Chen's hand. The scalding tea mixed with tea leaves flowed down, leaving red marks on the back of Old Chen's hand. Despite the overwhelming knife light, Old Chin remained expressionless. Zhuqing stared intently at Old Chin, his chest heaving violently. After a moment he took a deep breath and sheathed the straight knife. Have the interrogation team prepare. I will take people back immediately. Zhuqing pulled out his phone, instructed a few words to the other end of the line, and then hung up. He turned to look at Old Chin, who was still quietly sitting in the chair, his eyes narrowing slightly. Night Watchman Chen Lu, in the name of the Supreme Commander of the Night Watchmen of the Great Xia, I will detain you for questioning. Come with me. Old Chin slowly stood up from the chair, offering no resistance and making no attempt to escape, quietly following Zhuqing towards the distant plain. Ningchang County. A passenger plane slowly landed and Lin Qier and the others walked out of the airport, looking around at the arrival area. What are we waiting for? Chao Yuan asked in confusion. Waiting for the car. The car. Chao Yuan hesitated for a moment, then turned to Bai Li Pang. Did you book a stretch Lincoln again? No. Bai Li Pang replied innocently. Weren't we supposed to fully immerse ourselves in the perspective of the mask team? Jiang Er's voice came from the speaker at Qingyu's waist. The car we are about to take should be the same one the mask team took that day, right? That's right. On Lin Chia's forehead the crimson eye emitted a faint glow. After a long while he gently pulled down the brim of his hat, obscuring his eyes. The car is here. On the other side of the arrival area, a bus slowly approached, its body plastered with colorful travel promotion posters, stopping in front of the arrival area. A woman holding a megaphone stepped off the bus, a stack of flyers in her hand. After glancing around, she shouted loudly into the megaphone. 3-day tour of nearby attractions. Single tickets are 300 each. Group tickets are 20% off. Come take a look. The area near the arrival gate was already crowded with people and the noise was overwhelming. Although she tried her best to shout, her voice couldn't compete with the blaring horns. Bai Li Pang and the others followed Lin Chia's gaze, their expressions somewhat surprised. Did the mask team take this bus that day? Yes. Lin Chia slightly lifted the brim of his hat, his crimson eye scanning the bus, and nodded. At that time the mask team got off the plane and stood at our position, saw that bus and the shouting woman. Wang Mian walked up to the bus, took a flyer, looked at it for a while, and then led the mask members onto the bus. Lin Chia recounted the past scene he had seen with his black pupil. Were they here to carry out a mission, or were they really here to have fun? Bai Li Pang asked in confusion. These two things are not necessarily in conflict. And Qingyu adjusted her glasses and spoke slowly. From the mask team's behavior on the plane and their choice to take the tourist bus, it is not difficult to see that the task given to them by Zhuqing was not very urgent. They were likely just asked to pay attention to something while on vacation or to stop by somewhere on the way. The itinerary of that tourist bus likely included their target, so they chose to vacation while heading there. Lin Chia continued within Qingyu's reasoning. He stepped forward directly to the tourist bus and took a flyer from the shouting woman. Hey, take a look at our 3-day tour package. It's very cost-effective. It includes 8 attractions and it's only 300 per person. Are there other tourists on the bus? Lin Chia interrupted the woman directly. The woman was taken aback. Not yet, we just arrived. Lin Chia nodded and turned to Bai Li Pang Pang. Bai Li Pang Pang immediately understood, quickly walking up to the woman and pulling out a thick stack of cash from his pocket, handing it to her. We'll take it. Take it? What do you mean? The woman looked at the cash in both hands, her mouth agape in shock. So much money? How many people are in your group? Our small travel agency can only accommodate a maximum of 12 people at a time. You, the driver, the car, and the travel agency, we want them all. Bai Li Pang Pang grinned. The woman was left dumbfounded. On the speeding tourist bus, the woman had yet to recover from the shock of such a large sum of cash when Lin Chia approached her with several photos. Have you seen them? Lin Chia laid out the photos of the masked team members on the small table. The woman frowned in thought for a moment as if recalling something and replied. I've seen them. They were a few days ago when they booked a group tour with our agency. I have a strong impression of them. Why? Because there weren't many group tour guests to begin with and their requests were quite special. At the start they each gave 400 yuan for the tour fee and said they were used to being free. If they saw any attractions they liked they might just stay and not return to this bus. After the scheduled waiting time, they said we could leave without waiting for them. Lin Chia and Qingyu exchanged glances and nodded slightly. From the woman's description, it was clear their previous speculation was correct. This mask team had a mission, so after arriving at their destination, they couldn't guarantee they would return on time. Therefore they had informed the tour guide in advance. As for the excuse about being used to freedom, it was merely a cover. And then, after visiting which attraction did they never come back? Chapter 863. The Mysterious Coastline. The woman thought for a moment, picked up a flyer beside her and drew a circle on it with a pen. Here. Sunset Coastline? Lin Chia's gaze swept over the introduction of this attraction, deep in thought. That's right. We went to this spot the next afternoon. After they got off the bus to explore they never came back. After the scheduled time I waited in the car with the driver for another hour. After all, I thought this attraction was too remote. If they didn't take the bus, it would be hard for them to return to the city. But even when it got dark they still hadn't returned. At this point, a look of panic appeared in the woman's eyes. They wouldn't have gotten into some trouble, would they? Are you police? No, they returned safely because we're all friends. I was just asking casually about what they did, Lin Chia lied. I have a few questions. At that moment the previously silent Qingyu suddenly asked, You must be the tour guide for this travel agency, right? According to your description when they got off at the Sunset Coastline, you stayed in the car. Why didn't you as their guide go with them? That was their request. They said they didn't need me to follow. Is it that you can't follow at every attraction or just this one? Qingyu narrowed her eyes slightly, asking the most crucial question. I usually follow at most attractions but there are a few exceptions. The woman recalled for a moment and circled a few more places on the map of the flyer. Qingyu raised an eyebrow and nodded with a smile. I understand now, thank you. We're not going to any other attractions. We'll go directly to the Sunset Coastline, Lin Chia said to the woman, then returned to the back seat of the bus with Qingyu and the others. What did you find out? As soon as he sat down, Lin Chia curiously asked. The places where the mask team doesn't allow the guide to follow are all near the coastline, Qingyu replied. Lin Chia pondered for a moment. So you mean the mask team doesn't even know the exact task location, only that it's roughly in the vicinity of the coastline? Yes. Qingyu nodded. Based on the information we have, we can basically reconstruct the content of that phone call. The call was merely to inform the mask team that something seemed to have happened near the coastline in Ningchang County. This matter isn't urgent. For the mask team, it would just be a small task, allowing them to check it out while on vacation. Using a tone similar to looking out for them, can lead the mask team to a certain place without any vigilance while avoiding the cumbersome formal task issuance procedures of the watchers, thus not attracting any attention. At the same time, Qingyu extended her hand and pointed to the sunshades on both sides of the travel bus. The mask team is in a vehicle like this, and the road surveillance can't capture their traces at all. The infrastructure in Ningchang County is somewhat outdated. And the attractions are mostly natural scenic spots like mountains and seas, where there is no surveillance. As long as they use technical means to block their mobile signals, the mask team can achieve vanishing into thin air. So even if the Watchers send out a search team, it would be impossible to find the mask team in a short time. Fortunately, we already have clues, Lin Chia said. As long as we pinpoint the last location where the mask team appeared, finding them will just be a matter of time. The two were completely immersed in their own world, oblivious to the way the other team members looked at them as if they were monsters. What kind of brains do these two have? Bai Li Pang said with a grin. Sitting with them makes me feel like an idiot. I agree. Chao Yuan silently raised his hand in agreement. You also think you're not smart enough? No, I agree that you're an idiot. By the time Lin Chia and the others got off the tour bus, it was already dusk. The dim sunset spilled over the rolling waves, and the spray sparkled like broken gold along the brown coastline. A gentle breeze brushed against Lin Chia's cheek as he gazed for a moment at the tourists frolicking on the shore, then turned his eyes to the distance. There are quite a few people at this attraction, Shin Qingzhu said after getting off the bus, lighting a cigarette. The smoke quickly dissipated with the sea breeze, leaving no trace of odor. Where are we going next? The task location of the mask team should not be within this attraction area but somewhere nearby, and Qingyu pondered. There are too many people at this attraction. If the mask team really appeared here and did something, there would definitely be some traces left. They indeed didn't stay here for long. Lin Chia turned to look at the coastline, gradually shrouded in the shadows of the setting sun. After they strolled around here, they went straight over there. Let's go take a look. The group followed the path the mask team had taken that day, gradually distancing themselves from the noisy crowd. Everything around them slowly quieted down, and on the brown coastline, only the sound of waves remained. They walked for about an hour, and the sky had completely darkened, with faint glimmers of light appearing at the horizon. Lin Chia suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Jialan asked in confusion. Strange. Lin Chia lifted the brim of his hat, the crimson eye in the center of his brow flickering with light, his brow furrowed tightly. The Eye of Secrets has failed? How is that possible? The others behind him were taken aback. Black Eye, what's going on? Lin Chia asked in his mind. I don't know either, Director. The voice of Black Eye transmitted from the Crimson Eye into Lin Chia's mind. After coming here, I can't see the past of this area. It's as if the history here has been erased. I've never encountered such a situation before. What about the future? Same, the future is also a complete chaos. Black Eye was silent for a moment before reminding, Director, I feel something is off about this place. I understand. Lin Chia sighed. What happened? And Qingyu asked in confusion. This area ahead is strange. Both the past and future are chaotic and I can't find any traces of the mask team. Lin Chia raised his head, squinting at the distant lights and slowly spoke. It seems, we really found the right place. Chapter 864, Lodging. What place is that? Bai Li Pang squinted from a distance. Is it a village? It's a fishing village. Chao Yuan glanced at the map, his brow slightly furrowed. The map doesn't indicate there's a fishing village here. Is it too small to be marked? This location is too remote. There's not even a decent road. To get to the city from here it would take at least 5 hours on foot. Plus, this fishing village isn't very large, so it's not surprising it's not recorded on the map. And Qingyu paused and added softly, of course there could be some other reasons. Bai Li Pang shivered. Now that you mention it, I feel this fishing village is even creepier. Should we go in? Of course we should. The past and future of this fishing village are shrouded in mystery, which indicates something. The disappearance of this mask team is closely related to this place, Lin Chi said firmly. But before that we should send a message to headquarters just in case. Lin Chi took out his phone and contacted Zhu Qing, describing their location and situation before hanging up. Let's go in and see what makes this fishing village special. After Lin Chi and the others packed their gear, they stepped toward the distant fishing village. The tides crashed against the shore in the darkness, and the flickering lights in the night drew closer, emanating an eerie aura. Soon they reached the edge of the fishing village. Any discoveries? And Qingyu asked in a low voice. None. From the current situation, this is just an ordinary fishing village. Lin Qiyi had already scanned the village with his mental power. There are probably 20 to 30 households, most of whom are already resting. I haven't found anything unusual. No abnormalities. And Qingyu frowned slightly. How should we investigate? The quickest way is, of course, to ask the villagers directly. Lin Qiyi pointed to a few houses that still had lights on. Those families are still awake. We might as well give it a try. At this late hour, a few outsiders suddenly barging into the village asking questions might scare them. Bai Li Pang Pang scratched his head. Leave it to me. Jia Lan patted his chest. I'll pretend to be lost and ask to stay with one of the families, then find an opportunity to ask the villagers if they've seen this mask team, and gather some information about this village. Lin Qiyi pondered for a moment and nodded. This method is feasible, but we haven't figured out the details of this village yet. It's too dangerous for you to go alone. He turned to Qingyu and Jiang Er. Qingyu, Jiang Er, you two should go with Jia Lan. And Qingyu raised an eyebrow, a subtle expression appearing on her face. Why aren't you going with Jia Lan? I need to use the Eye of Secrets to search the area around the village to see if I can find anything else. Lin Qiyi shrugged. All right. Then I'll go with old Chow and Zhuang Gu to another house to ask for lodging. Bai Li Pang Pang volunteered. That's fine, but remember not to let Chow Yuan knock on the door. He doesn't look like a good person and might scare the villagers. Chow Yuan. Then let's split up tonight to gather clues and regroup here in the morning. If anything unexpected happens during that time, don't worry too much. Just make a commotion, the louder the better, and the others will come right away. Lin Qiyi said seriously to everyone. Understood. Late at night. Knock knock knock. Who is it? A voice came from inside the old house. The door opened, revealing a fisherman in his 40s, standing at the entrance with a wary expression. He paused slightly upon seeing a man and a woman before him. Both were unfamiliar faces. The woman wore a deep blue Han robe, her long black hair tied with a red ribbon hanging down to her waist, her eyes sparkling like stars. The man appeared refined, wearing black-framed glasses with a shy and friendly smile. Seeing these two harmless-looking faces, the fisherman's wariness eased a bit. Who are you? Where did you come from? Sorry to disturb you. And Qingyu slightly bowed, apologetically speaking. We're tourists in the area and accidentally got separated from our tour group, then lost our way and ended up in this village. It's already late and we don't know the way, so we were hoping to find a place to stay. Would that be all right? The fisherman scrutinized them suspiciously, then glanced at Jia Lan beside her. Uncle, it's really dark and cold outside. Could you lend us a vacant room to sleep in? If not, we can sleep on the ground, Jia Lan said pitifully. Hearing this, the fisherman's wariness dissipated a bit more. He carefully examined the two young people and they didn't seem like bad people. After hesitating for a moment, he nodded. All right, we have an empty room. You can stay for one night, but you must leave by morning, understood? Thank you. Thank you, uncle. The fisherman stepped back into the house and Qingyu and Jia Lan exchanged glances, both smiling as they stepped inside. The fisherman's home was very simple. The living room had only a square table and a few benches, with fishing tools densely hanging on the walls. As soon as they entered, a faint smell of the sea wafted over. The fisherman pointed to an empty room and said, "That's it. It used to be my son's room, but no one has lived there for a long time. You'll have to make do." Jia Lan nodded and stepped into the room. And Qingyu turned back, smiling as she continued to chat with the fisherman. "May I ask your surname?" "My surname is Qin and my name is Qin Go. The villagers call me Old Go." The fisherman casually moved a stool to sit down and gestured for Qingyu to take a seat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a box of cigarettes, taking one out and offering it to Qingyu. Qingyu's mouth twitched slightly. She intended to refuse but hesitated and accepted it. "Uncle Qin." Qingyu pretended to hold the cigarette casually and asked, "Do you usually live alone?" "Yes." Qin Go picked up a box of matches from the table, struck one lightly and the faint spark ignited, lighting the cigarette in his and in Qingyu's hands. "My wife passed away several years ago, and my son left this fishing village a few years ago to seek his fortune elsewhere." Qingyu glanced back at the long uninhabited room. He hasn't returned in many years? Yes. Chingo's gaze lingered on that room and he smiled slightly. But this kid was the first to leave our village, so he brought me some pride. Chapter 865. Secrets. Inside the room, Jialon glanced at Qingyu and Chingo, who were still chatting outside, gently closed the door, and a white figure floated out from the ground, hovering beside her. Jialon Jia. Jiang Er's voice came through the earpiece in Jialon's ear. I just took a walk around here. This village has no electronic devices except for a few broken radios, not even a single mobile phone. Considering Jiang Er's ghostly state was too frightening, and the idea of knocking on villagers' doors in the middle of the night while carrying a coffin didn't seem normal, and Qingyu had hidden Jiang Er's coffin in a cave outside the village and borrowed a caregiver from Lin Chia to protect the coffin, preventing any accidents with Jiang Er. With Jiang Er's current range of spiritual communication, even if the coffin was in the cave, she could still move freely within the fishing village through magnetic fields. It does seem a bit backward here, Jialon remarked, her gaze sweeping over the dilapidated houses, finally resting on a wall that had lost its paint. On that gray-brown wall hung several old-fashioned picture frames, each containing slightly yellowed old photographs. The background was along the coastline of this fishing village, where a middle-aged man was happily smiling while holding a few large fish, accompanied by a boy around 7 or 8 years old. The middle-aged man in the photo was the younger version of the fisherman named Chingo outside. He doesn't look that old in the photo, does he? Jiang Er pondered. His son should be in his 20s now, right? About that. Jialon shifted her gaze from the photo and began to examine other details of the room. While helping out, Jiang Er hesitated for a moment before curiously speaking up. Jialon Jia? Yes. I heard that you and Chia collapsed the bed last night? Cough cough cough. Upon hearing this, Jialon nearly choked, breaking into a fit of coughing. No, it's not what you think. Jialon's cheeks flushed red as she stammered. We did collapse the bed, but we didn't do anything. Jiang Er subtly glanced at Jialon's legs. I can tell. Jialon's face turned even redder. Seeing Jialon like this, Jiang Er's lips curled into a slight smile. After hesitating for a moment, she tentatively asked, But Jialon Jia, isn't that a bit inappropriate? I mean, the divine ruins are still the divine ruins. Even if pseudo-love can make others feel intense affection, that love is ultimately false, Jiang Er said seriously. Even if you hit Chia with the arrow of love, his affection will eventually fade. This kind of forced love is not advisable. Jialon looked at Jiang Er's serious expression and blinked, a hint of a smile appearing in her gem-like black eyes. She gently walked over to Jiang Er, lowered her voice and said mysteriously, Actually. After a brief whisper, Jiang Er's mouth fell open in surprise as she looked at her. So you actually... Shoo. Jialon made a gesture for silence, smiling as she said, Don't tell anyone about this, okay? His thick-headedness is finally starting to make sense. If you say it out loud, it won't work anymore. Jiang Er nodded vigorously. Don't worry, Jialon Jia. Jialon nodded in satisfaction. Just as she was about to open the door and step out, her peripheral vision caught something and she stopped. She squinted slightly, staring at the old photo at the edge of the wall. In the corners of this father-son photo, 2 names were scrawled in a crooked manner, along with pinyin, likely written by a child just learning to write. On the left side, next to the middle-aged man, it read, Chen Go, 3rd tone. On the right side, next to the laughing child, the same crooked handwriting spelled out 2 characters. Chen Lu. Night Watch Headquarters. Interrogation room. In a dark and damp small room, an elderly man with silver hair was imprisoned in the center, his eyes tightly closed, his expression solemn and tranquil. In front of him stood a man with a fierce face, emanating a cold, ghostly aura. Chen Lu, I advise you not to be ungrateful, the man spoke ominously. I respect you as a hero of the Night Watch from back in the day and have given you enough face. Don't force my hand. The old man's eyes slightly opened, gazing at the man for a moment before breaking into a gentle smile. You're Tan Maoxuan, right? I remember you. When I was the chief instructor at the training camp, you performed quite well. It was my suggestion that led you down this path. Tan Maoxuan's eyes flickered, his fierce expression freezing on his face. He opened his mouth as if to say something harsh, but he couldn't find the words. Kid, there's no need to be nervous or feel offended. Let me see how much you've grown over the years, the old man said warmly. Come on, use your most confident methods and see if you can pry my mouth open to get what you want. Tan Maoxuan gritted his teeth, hesitating for a moment before the ghostly aura erupted around him again. All right, then let me show you. He suddenly reached out and pressed his hand against the old man's chest, the ghostly light surging into the old man's body like a stabbing force, a hint of madness appearing in his eyes. The old man's body was completely engulfed by the ghostly light. He trembled as the ghostly spikes pierced his skin at an astonishing frequency, causing him to furrow his brow slightly, his expression pained, but that was all. Speak. Where is the mask team? What do you want to do? Tan Maoxuan shouted. Under the torment of the intense pain, the old man's aged cheeks trembled, a smile appearing on his face as he said slowly, Not bad, you've improved a lot compared to back then. No wonder you're my student. Tan Maoxuan's pupils constricted sharply. His chest heaved violently, a fierce look in his eyes, and the ghostly light continued to pour into the old man's body. Yet the old man remained smiling amidst the ghostly light, his eyes filled with approval, showing no intention of saying anything more. Enough. Suoqing's voice came from outside the interrogation room. The ghostly light around Tan Maoxuan paused, retreating back into his body like a receding tide. He stepped back 2 paces, respectfully bowing slightly to Suoqing. Commander Suo. Suoqing walked in from outside, frowning as he looked at the smiling silver-haired elder, his fists clenching tightly. Why did you stop? The old man said leisurely. If you can't get anything out of this, why not switch to someone else? Chapter 866. Emphasizing strengths and avoiding weaknesses. Suoqing took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Don't worry, there are plenty of rising stars among the Night Watchers in the past 2 years. Sooner or later we'll get you to talk. Then I'll wait and see, Old Chen smiled. Suoqing's gaze sharpened slightly as he waved his hand to Tan Maoxuan, who then left the interrogation room and locked the door behind him. I'm here to remind you that we've already found the whereabouts of the mask team, Suoqing said calmly. Oh. Old Chen raised an eyebrow, seemingly surprised. I must remind you that there's a significant difference between voluntarily confessing and me extracting the information from you. If you come clean now, I can offer you a dignified way to die. Heh. Old Chen chuckled lightly. Isn't this method a bit too primitive for trying to extract information from me? Do you really think I'm trying to extract information? Suoqing calmly took out his phone, zoomed in on a map and pointed to a specific location. Ningchang County Coastal Fishing Village. Seeing the red-marked address, Old Chen's pupils constricted slightly. For the first time since entering the interrogation room, his expression turned serious. You really don't hide your surprise at all, Suoqing said calmly. Don't you think I'm trying to trick you? How did you find it? Old Chen asked, puzzled. I should have erased all traces. I told you, there are plenty of rising stars among the Night Watchers in the past 2 years. Old Chen fell silent. Is it nightfall? After a long pause, Old Chen finally spoke. They've already entered that fishing village to look for clues, and our follow-up team is also on their way there. Suoqing stepped closer to Old Chen, speaking slowly and deliberately. Now, do you have anything to confess? There's still time. Upon hearing this, Old Chen was taken aback as if he remembered something. What's the date today? This sudden question made Suoqing frown slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he answered truthfully, the 14th. The 14th? Old Chen murmured the date, a smile creeping onto his lips. He first chuckled softly, then uncontrollably burst into laughter. His laughter echoed in the interrogation room, eerie and terrifying. What are you laughing at? Suoqing asked coldly. I'm laughing at you for letting the Nightfall team just walk in like this. Old Chen's aged face cracked into deep lines as he laughed. I originally just wanted to eliminate the biggest threat, the mask. But unexpectedly I can also take down a Nightfall team. What a pleasant surprise. Suoqing's expression darkened immediately. He suddenly reached out, grabbing Old Chen by the collar and bringing his face close, his eyes wide with rage. What do you mean? Old Chen's disheveled silver hair fell over his aged face, and his deep murky eyes quietly stared into Suoqing's furious gaze. He slowly spoke. Don't you understand? Switching, neither the mask nor the nightfall will come back. The destruction of these two special teams will push the Great Xia directly into an endless abyss. This battle the Night Watchers are bound to lose. Bastard! Switching could no longer contain his inner fury and slammed his fist into old Chen's face, sending him crashing to the ground. Chen Lu, what exactly have you prepared in that fishing village? I haven't prepared anything. Old Chen lay on the ground smiling. Only them have been watching over there. Upon hearing the word them, Switching's brows furrowed tightly. Just as he was about to pull old Chen up to ask more, he paused for a moment and chose to leave the interrogation room instead. Where's the Nightfall team? Switching asked coldly. They entered the fishing village after sending back this address. Contact them. Regardless of whether they found any clues about the mask, they must retreat immediately. No, Commander Zhua. The technician's fingers flew over the keyboard, beads of cold sweat forming on his forehead. They've lost signal just like the mask team. Switching's expression turned grim. He stood still for a moment contemplating, then ordered again, the location of the monastery shouldn't be far from there. Have the master head there now. Yes. Also. Switching's gaze swept over old Chen in the interrogation room, his eyes narrowing slightly. Pull up all his background information and check if there's any connection between him and that small fishing village in Ningchang County. Fishing village. Knock knock knock. Who is it? A fisherman opened the door and froze upon seeing the three people standing outside. A chubby man with a grotesque scar on his face, grinning widely. A fierce-looking man who clearly didn't seem like a good person. And a delinquent youth with a cigarette in his mouth, squinting at him. Good evening, big brother. We're lost tourists. Bai Li Pang Pang cleared his throat about to say something, when the villager quickly retreated behind the door as if he had seen a ghost. Bang! With a dull thud, the door was slammed shut, followed by the sound of a lock clicking. Bai Li Pang Pang's smile froze in the evening breeze. Chao Yuan. Shin Qingzhu. How many houses is this now? Shin Qingzhu asked, exhaling a puff of smoke with a hint of melancholy. The fourth one. Bai Li Pang Pang replied dejectedly. What's going on? Are the people in this village so wary? Why don't they even let us finish speaking? I feel like normal people wouldn't let three of us stay over, Chao Yuan said quietly. What should we do? This isn't a solution. Shin Qingzhu pondered for a moment. I think we need to play to our strengths and avoid our weaknesses. Play to our strengths and avoid our weaknesses? Bai Li Pang Pang became interested. What strengths do we have? Our weakness is that we don't look like good citizens, but we have one strength. Shin Qingzhu patted Bai Li Pang Pang's shoulder and said seriously, we have money, a lot of money. Bai Li Pang Pang's eyes gradually lit up. A few minutes later, as a household's door opened, Bai Li Pang Pang suddenly blocked the door with one hand while pulling out thick stacks of cash from his pocket with the other, frantically stuffing them through the gap in the door. Big brother. Don't close the door yet. We're lost tourists, we just need a place to stay for one night and I'll give you 50,000 for one night. At Bai Li Pang Pang's words, the villager paused slightly, his hand loosening on the door. 50,000? He squatted down with a strange expression, casually picking up 100 yuan bill from the ground and examining it closely, his brow furrowing. He forcefully tossed the bill away and said irritably, You think you can stay here with fake money? Get lost. Otherwise, I'll call someone. Chapter 867. The Dilemma of the Fishing Village. The door slammed shut with a bang. Bai Li Pang Pang stood on the ground covered in cash, stunned like a wooden chicken. After an unknown amount of time he finally pointed at the door, incredulously exclaiming, Is he crazy? He said I'm using counterfeit money. How could this possibly be counterfeit? Shin Qingzhu furrowed his brows tightly. He bent down and casually picked up a bill from the ground, examining it closely for a moment. This is real. Of course it's real. But the expression of that villager just now didn't seem fake. When he heard the number 50,000 he really seemed tempted, Chao Yuan said, frowning in thought. Shin Qingzhu picked up the money from the ground one by one and stuffed it into Bai Li Pang Pang's hands. He turned around, squinting at the ancient fishing village shrouded in darkness, and slowly spoke. The money isn't the problem is this village. What do you mean? Bailey Peng Peng asked, confused. From the moment the first household opened their door, I sensed something was off, Shen Qingzhu said calmly. The calendar hanging on that family's wall is from 50 years ago. Bailey Peng Peng was taken aback, frowning as he pondered for a moment, unable to recall any impression of that calendar. A calendar from 50 years ago? Chao Yuan exclaimed in surprise. Could it have been hung up incorrectly? No, that calendar looks too new. It doesn't resemble a product from 50 years ago at all. It looks more like something that was just produced not long ago, Shen Qingzhu asserted. And the shoes and oil lamps in the other households are not items from this era. They are very old and most of them have already been discontinued. You can't even buy them if you wanted to. At first I thought it was just a coincidence or that this place was too backward. If that person hadn't just said that this was counterfeit money, I might not have realized this issue. Among the three present, no one could match Shen Qingzhu's observational skills. At this moment, with Shen Qingzhu pointing out these discrepancies, Bailey Peng Peng and Chao Yuan naturally wouldn't doubt him. Are you saying we've crossed over? Bailey Peng Peng tentatively asked, following Shen Qingzhu's line of thought. I don't know, it's just a possibility, Shen Qingzhu said with a serious expression. Seven Knight was right, this place is very strange. As night deepened, the lights in the fishing village gradually went out, and the coastal village was completely engulfed in darkness. The waves lapped at the shore, causing the nearby small boats to sway slightly. Under the dim moonlight, the waves sparkled white like crushed silver, rolling to Lin Chia's feet. He walked alone along the edge of the waves in the deep night. At this moment he had taken off that hat, and the surrounding darkness automatically coalesced, forming a shadowy figure that followed behind him, a crimson eye opening on the shadow's forehead. How is it? Lin Chia asked, gazing at the horizon of darkness in the distance. Director, I still can't see anything, the black-eyed figure replied helplessly. We've almost crossed the entire fishing village and still nothing? Nothing. Strange. Lin Chia pondered for a moment, allowing the black-eyed figure to merge with his shadow. He slightly bent his body, his mental energy surging, and transformed into a streak of night swiftly racing along the coastline toward the distance. The environment in his eyes rapidly receded, the hazy moonlight spilling onto the coastline, gradually dimming as he sped forward. Suddenly, the moon in the sky flickered as if it had extinguished for a moment, and everything around Lin Chia plunged into absolute darkness. Then Lin Chia's vision returned. He abruptly stopped. The sound of the waves echoed in his ears as he stared blankly at the dark fishing village that had appeared out of thin air before him, disbelief filling his eyes. How could this be possible? He had clearly been running in the opposite direction. How did he end up back here? Lin Chia turned to look at the path he had come from, deep and mysterious. Even with the moonlight covering the ground, it remained as dark as a black hole that devoured everything. Not even light could escape. Lin Chia's brows furrowed tightly as he turned back and plunged into that darkness. The moon in the sky extinguished for a moment again, and the next moment he found himself standing at the edge of the coastline in the opposite direction. At both ends of the coastline, it was as if some mysterious force connected them. Whenever Lin Chia tried to leave from one side, he would be forced to return from the other end, like an endless loop of a ghostly wall. Lin Chia looked at the fishing village in the distance, refusing to believe it. He reached out and pressed into the void, and endless clouds rolled beneath his feet, transforming into a cloud that lifted his body, soaring into the sky. The speed of the cloud far exceeded his own, and he could easily leap across the range of a small fishing village in the blink of an eye. However, no matter how he maneuvered the cloud or from what angle he tried to leap over the village's boundaries, he would inexplicably circle back to the original spot. The most critical part was that his mental energy perception didn't detect any anomalies. There were no signs of forbidden fluctuations or forbidden objects. Everything felt so reasonable and natural, as if it were meant to be. Even when he used white slash to slip into the void, he couldn't escape the range of this fishing village. After dozens of attempts, Lin Chia silently flew back to the coastline, dispersing the cloud with a wave of his hand, his expression more serious than ever. They were trapped in this fishing village. He didn't know who had left such a method here, nor did he understand the principle behind this bizarre phenomenon. Not knowing how to get out, Lin Chia stood by the coastline, staring at the dark village in the distance, feeling a chill run down his spine. The unknown was more terrifying than an absolute disparity in strength. Lin Chia took out his phone, but there was no signal at all. He sighed and put it back in his pocket. He calmed his mind and began to think seriously. Since they couldn't leave this village in the short term, the urgent task was to figure out the details of this place. At the very least, they needed to know what they were facing while also searching for the whereabouts of the mask team. Since they had arrived here earlier than him, they might have left some clues. Moreover, before he entered this village, he had already sent his location to the Night Watch headquarters. If they really encountered something they couldn't handle, as long as they delayed for as long as possible, Suiqing would definitely send someone to support them. He just didn't know how things were going on Jialan and Peng Peng's side. Since there hadn't been any major movements from them so far, it meant they hadn't encountered danger for the time being, and everything was still within a controllable range. At least it appeared so on the surface.